Lily didn't know what to do anymore. She paced back and forth, unable to calm herself down. Even the wedding dress felt unbearable. It was heavy and awkward, though that wasn't really the issue. Where was the groom? There were only 15 minutes left before the registration. Guests were crowded around the registry office, waiting. She had to keep her emotions in check, but it was especially difficult now. Lily's friends were already exhausted, either from standing in high heels or from the tedious waiting. They were eager to start taking pictures and posting stories on Instagram. The photographers running the ceremony were just as nervous as Lily, constantly running up and asking if everything was all right. Time kept passing, but Ethan was still not there. The tension grew, and with each minute, Charlotte and Edward's faces looked more puzzled. How could someone be late to their own wedding? Lily's mother was the first to speak up, clearly tired of all the waiting. The excitement had worn off. Just a few minutes later, an old Buick, probably as old as Lily herself, pulled up in front of the registry office. The guests stared in surprise as a young man stepped out of the car. He was wearing a simple suit and held a bouquet of 3 chrysanthemums in his hands. 2 people climbed out of the back seat, a little younger than Lily's parents, dressed in outdated clothes that seemed to come from another century. Without any sign of embarrassment, they began climbing the stairs. Oh, what an interesting costume. Is this a wedding or a costume party? One of Lily's guests shouted. The young man laughed and handed the stunned Lily the bouquet of chrysanthemums. Hey, darling. Sorry I'm late. The crowd fell silent, watching in anticipation as events unfolded. Ethan, what is this? Can you explain? Is this some kind of surprise? Lily could barely breathe, her corset feeling tighter with each breath. My love, calm down. This isn't a surprise. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, this is just the reality. I fell in love with you so deeply that I couldn't tell you the truth right away. I'm not rich. My parents are just simple workers, and I'm a taxi driver who wants to be your husband. Lily's face turned red with anger. Ethan, how can you joke with me like this? Is this some hidden camera thing? A test to see if I'd marry some poor, unlucky guy? Her voice shook with frustration. Lily, stop. There's no trick here. No cameras. You just told me you loved me yesterday. Has that changed so quickly? Ethan's voice stayed calm, trying to reason with her. Quit joking, Ethan. What kind of circus is this? Did you really come here just to humiliate me? Well, congratulations. You succeeded. How did I not see you were a fraud from the beginning? Her words were filled with bitterness. No circus, Lily, Ethan said seriously. Remember when we were on that boat ride? You told me you wanted to live with me forever. And at the cafe, when I gave you that expensive watch, I paid for all that with money I earned. I knew you wouldn't want a modest wedding, so I took out a loan to make it happen. Lily covered her face with her hands and cried quietly. She never imagined that what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life could turn into the worst. She thought she had found a kind, gentle, and wealthy man, and she had already pictured her future in bright colors. She'd even started doing worse in university, thinking she wouldn't need to look for a job right after graduation, despite her parents constantly reminding her to be practical. Ethan always dressed well, drove an expensive car, and had an apartment in the most prestigious area of the city. Lily didn't think she'd won the lottery. This was just what she expected. She came from a well-off family. She was attractive, so why shouldn't she have a partner to match? Ethan reached out to embrace her, but Lily pushed him away angrily. How could you? How could you embarrass me like this in front of everyone on a day like today? There won't be any wedding. She turned her back on the guests and walked away. The stunned parents of the bride and groom exchanged looks, unsure of what to do. One of Lily's friends discreetly pulled out her phone and started recording. The guests stood frozen in place, watching the drama unfold. It's not every day you witness a wedding disaster. Lily's father, Edward, was the first to break out of the shock. Daughter, come back. It's fine. These things happen between a bride and groom. But Lily, her face wet with tears, ran down the sidewalk. Charlotte hurried after her, while Edward sat on the steps of the registry office, his head lowered. All eyes turned to Ethan. He calmly handed the bouquet to his parents and sat down next to Edward. "How are you going to explain all this?" Edward asked, looking Ethan straight in the eyes. Edward, you and your wife have worked hard all your lives to give your daughter the best. But there was one thing missing: honesty and selflessness. What are you talking about? My daughter is an honest girl. You're the one who lied to her. You took her to restaurants, drove her around in expensive cars. Why? If you couldn't afford it, why didn't you tell her yourself? I'm sure if she loved you, it wouldn't have been an issue. You could have built everything together over time. Edward glared at Ethan with hatred. Why didn't we see through you, swindler? No one doubts your daughter's honesty, Ethan replied calmly. But why did she run off when she learned about my situation? I'm not a drug addict, not a drunk, not a criminal. I earn money through honest work. Yes, the pay isn't big, but it would have been enough for us to live on. And you know what? I won't justify myself anymore. I loved your daughter, sincerely. But today, I saw with my own eyes that she doesn't need me. She cares about money and appearances, not about me. Relatives stood around, listening to Ethan's strange confession, but they still couldn't understand what was happening. Lily's friends were the most confused. Ethan had taken her to cafes and restaurants and given her gifts. Now what? Had he suddenly gone broke? Or had he been pretending to be rich all this time? Nothing was clear. No one moved from their spot near the registry office, as if waiting for something, though no one knew what. Ethan finally stood up and was about to leave, but suddenly, a woman in a bright, colorful dress blocked his path. It was Lily's aunt. "Where do you think you're going? You think you can disgrace my niece like this and just leave? If you loved her, how could you have arranged this? Look at all the guests who've come. Look at the effort that's been put into this day." Her voice broke into a scream. "And why don't you ask your dear niece Lily why she refused to marry a simple working man? No perks, no marriage," Ethan said, his nerves beginning to show. "Is it shameful for a girl to want to improve her life? And what about when the kids come? She'll be stuck on maternity leave with no money. You call that being calculating? It's called being practical. Did she deceive me? Was she pretending to be someone she's not?" Ethan looked like he wanted to argue more, but fell silent. Suddenly, his mother, Isabel, approached Lily's aunt and spoke in a calm voice. Ethan didn't want to embarrass his future wife. He fell in love deeply for the first time in his life. And it's not his fault this happened. Lily is the one to blame. "What? You're saying it's Lily's fault?" the aunt snapped. "Of course, the son's always a saint, and the daughter-in-law is always bad. We saw Lily with another man at a cafe a month ago," Isabel said, stunning Edward and silencing the angry woman. "We were sitting with mutual friends at the cafe. Lily didn't see us, but we overheard her telling the young man that she loved him and was only marrying Ethan for his money. We couldn't keep that from our son." The guests stood in shock at what they'd heard. No one expected such a turn of events. Even Ethan seemed uncomfortable with his mother's words. He gently took her elbow and tried to lead her away, but Isabel wasn't finished. "Ethan didn't speak to us for a week. Then he told us he'd still marry Lily. So we convinced him to take this step, to reveal his situation and see if she really loved him. And we couldn't imagine she'd run from her own wedding. Isn't that proof she doesn't love our son? She only cares about the money. Come on, Mom, let's go," Ethan said, taking her toward the car. By now, the guests had started to disperse, and Lily's father still stood in a daze, unable to comprehend what had happened. "How could I have raised such a daughter?" Edward muttered to himself, lost in thought, not knowing where he was going or what he was doing. His family's attempts to console him were in vain. Edward loved Lily deeply and had looked forward to her happy future, but it had all fallen apart in an instant. 3 months passed since the ill-fated wedding, and Lily's family had undergone incredible changes. Edward suffered a stroke, leaving the left side of his body paralyzed. It was a shock to the family. He had always been active and hardworking, but now he spent most of his time in bed. Charlotte had to give up her work at the store, quickly hiring a new manager, and devoted all her time to caring for Edward. Lily was finishing her final year at university, preparing for her exams. The dark cloud over the family didn't seem to lift. Store sales began to drop noticeably. Regular customers, once greeted by Charlotte's warmth, now showed up less and less. Salaries were cut, and 2 employees had to be let go. Only Charlotte's elderly friend and a young woman of 25 remained, handling the cleaning as well. But even with just the 2 of them, the workload was overwhelming. Since the failed wedding, Edward had abandoned all his business dealings and began lending money to anyone who asked, as if trying to prove his generosity and selflessness. But now, with the store on the brink of collapse, all those debtors had vanished. Charlotte was lost. She had never dealt with financial matters and didn't have the time to now. She spent the last of their savings on Edward's rehabilitation. Close relatives tried to support the family as much as they could, but everyone had their own problems. All the responsibility for Edward's care fell on Charlotte's shoulders. Lily herself had never been interested in her parents' business affairs. She was either too busy studying at school and then university, or she had other reasons. In truth, Edward and Charlotte never wanted her involved in sales. After facing tough times in the trade industry, they had high hopes that Lily would pursue a prestigious career, something very different from their own. But all of Lily's plans came crashing down. She didn't know how to help her parents, and maybe she didn't want to. She had no desire to care for her father or get involved in the family business. Her close friends seemed to have disappeared too. They were happy to be around her when she was cheerful, carefree, and financially secure. But now, she was always out of money and time. She started acting like she was a victim, betrayed and humiliated. Many of her classmates kept gossiping. She thinks she's depressed and a victim, but really, she just wanted to have it both ways. Marry a rich guy and have an affair behind his back. It hadn't worked out, and now everyone blamed her for her father's stroke. No one showed her sympathy, neither relatives nor friends. Ethan, who she thought would come begging for forgiveness, didn't answer her calls or messages. Even her own mother hadn't spoken to her in days. By the end of June, Lily finally received her university diploma. When she got home, she collapsed on her bed and picked up her phone without saying a word. "Lily, could you go pick up some groceries?" her mother asked from the other room. "Don't you have anything else to say to me?" Lily replied defiantly. "Lily, we've been out of milk and bread for 2 days. So, bread is more important to you than your daughter's diploma?" Lily shot back. Not so long ago, things were different. Her mother emerged from the room, looking pale. "You know, daughter, I never realized what a terrible person I've raised. It's painful to accept that you're my child." "Wait, did you just call me a terrible person? Are you out of your mind? I just graduated and got my diploma, and you're sending me to the store instead of congratulating me? You're almost 23 years old, but you still think like a child. It was a huge mistake for your father and me to indulge you and help plan your wedding." "Oh, so now you're blaming me for Ethan dumping me?" "Yes, I am. And not just for that," her mother said quietly, careful not to wake her sleeping husband. "Your behavior is what caused your father's stroke, and I nearly had a heart attack. You started an affair, even though you knew you were about to get married." "Mom, I've already explained this 1,000 times. I didn't have an affair with that guy. It was a business meeting. I never imagined Ethan's parents would be there. I didn't confess any love to him. I don't know why Isabel told Dad that, and I don't understand why you believed her over me." Lily continued. "That guy messaged me on Instagram asking if I, as a beginner designer, could help him pick out some furniture. Of course, I agreed. I need to gain experience, right? We met, I gave him some advice, and he thanked me by inviting me to our student cafe. We sat, drank coffee, and talked. He started flirting with me, and I told him I was getting married soon so he wouldn't expect anything. Then he started asking all these questions like whether I could love him. I told him no and began to leave. Then he asked if I could pay for my own coffee. I told him, "Why would you invite a girl to a cafe if you don't have money?" He tried justifying himself, asking why money is so important to girls, like it's the only thing that matters. Lily sighed. I told him yes, money is important to me, and my fiancé is wealthy, which is why I chose him. Why did money become your top priority? Her mother asked, her voice strained. Lily, we didn't raise you in poverty. You had everything you wanted. Mom, you're being ridiculous, Lily replied. Money means freedom. Sure, it doesn't buy everything, but a good income lets me live the way I want, not like you and Dad. You've both worked from dawn till dusk in that store. If we were better off financially, Dad wouldn't have been so stressed about the money we spent on that stupid wedding. Charlotte wanted to get angry at her daughter's words, but suddenly she became eerily calm. Your father didn't have a stroke because we spent a lot on the wedding. He was devastated when he realized what kind of selfish and two-faced daughter he had raised. Wow, are you blaming me again? Lily exclaimed. At least I was honest with Ethan. He lied to me. Was he rich or was he poor? A decent person wouldn't deceive someone like that. I value myself, and I don't want to marry a clown or a liar. So, maybe you should rethink who's really two-faced and selfish. Enough, Lily, Charlotte said sternly. I won't feel sorry for you anymore. Tomorrow morning, we're going to the store, and you'll work as a sales clerk until we start making a decent profit. Me? A sales clerk? I don't even know how to do that. Have you even asked my opinion? Lily protested. I didn't ask, and I'm not going to. Do you have any idea how much it costs to rehabilitate your father these past 2 months? Do you know how I paid the employees or managed everything? You only think about yourself, Charlotte said coldly. She put money on the table and left the room. Lily headed to the nearby grocery store, overwhelmed by tears. She couldn't imagine herself working as a sales clerk, eating a sandwich for lunch, gossiping with the other workers. She felt like her young, beautiful life was over, and she'd have to forget about her interior design career forever. Who would hire her as a recent graduate with CS on her diploma for such a serious and creative job? She needed experience, but she wasn't going to work for free, and earning decent money wouldn't come right away. The next day, Lily and her mother went to the store, while Aunt Rose stayed home to take care of Lily's recovering father. The store was at the intersection of two busy streets, which helped keep it from closing down. Customers always appreciated the quality and variety of goods, but competition from the nearby shopping center was tough. The center sold cheap, low-quality clothing, but it was in high demand. At a family meeting, they decided to introduce discounts for regular customers and consider other marketing strategies. Hello, Charlotte. So glad to see you, said the shop's hostess, who also worked as a salesperson. Hello, Olivia. I brought you a new employee, Charlotte said, pointing at Lily. Olivia, I have one request. Treat Lily like any other person here to learn, not as my daughter. All right, we'll teach her everything, Olivia replied with a smile. Charlotte, while you're here, I should tell you, we sold the old stock quickly, but the new items aren't moving as well. The fabric is wool, but the gray color is a little faded. Not everyone likes it. We haven't sold a single suit this week. Customers are asking for dark gray or black. You should talk to the supplier, maybe order more pants and suits. Those are still in demand. Lily listened in horror as her mother discussed inventory with the salesperson. What sizes? What wool fabric? She was a designer and had studied fabrics and color combinations, but there was a big difference between creating something in a soulless office and trying to please customers every day. She remembered how uncomfortable it had always been watching her mom or dad turn into such warm, friendly people in front of customers, only to come home and barely speak to each other. As a child, she couldn't understand why her parents were so tired. They didn't have the hardest job in the world. Only years later did she realize that any job involving people, when done right, was incredibly exhausting. Is this what my mom wants me to learn? To make everyone happy? Lily muttered to herself. She didn't even notice she had wandered into the men's section, lost in a sea of shirts and sweaters. Are you picking something for your husband? Came a friendly voice from behind her. Your man would probably love this cashmere sweater. It's warm, cozy, and we have all sizes, plus 5 colors to choose from. Lily hesitated. She didn't know how to introduce herself. Was she the owner's daughter or a new employee? I won't bother you, the salesperson said, smiling warmly. Take your time. When you're ready, let me know. Lily was surprised by how pleasant the sales staff were. The girl was professional and polite. Her gloomy mood lifted, and for the first time, the thought of working as a salesperson didn't seem so bad. She left the men's section and headed back toward her mother, feeling a sudden burst of enthusiasm. Mom, what should I do? I'm ready to work, Lily said, surprising her mother, who looked like she'd seen a ghost. Meet my daughter, Lily. Well, Olivia, you already know her. And this is Amelia, who recently started working with us. I haven't introduced you two yet. The girls exchanged polite greetings. Nice to meet you, Amelia said, laughing. I actually mistook Lily for a customer and started offering her men's pullovers. Charlotte smiled, watching the interaction between Lily and Amelia. She knew her daughter had a difficult personality and had no illusions about how Lily would handle working in the store. But the months of exhaustion had caught up with Charlotte, and she decided to let things play out. Lily hadn't expected things to turn out this way. Boom! And she was now a salesperson for plus-size clothes. But surprisingly, she felt a surge of energy. She pushed aside all her doubts and got to work learning the ropes. These are single-breasted jackets. Those are double-breasted. And here are our fabric booklets. These jackets used to be extremely popular, Amelia explained to Lily as they sorted through the women's section. What's the largest size we carry? Lily asked, still unsure. We usually order tunics and dresses up to size XL, Amelia replied, noticing Lily's puzzled look. You know, there are different body types, different women. Really? I didn't think plus-size clothes were that popular, Lily admitted, surprised. Your parents are smart. They wouldn't sell outdated things. Think about it. Most fashionable clothes, whether dresses, blouses, or skirts, stop at size L. But women of all sizes want to look elegant and modern. And men, too. We have plenty of regular customers who don't care about losing weight. They just want to dress well. It's not our place to judge. Our job is to meet their needs. And you know, there are very few places in town where you can find high-quality, fashionable clothes in these sizes. Sure, there are online stores, but we're still ahead of them in this market. But when someone comes to us, we don't just sell them something heartlessly. We take time to understand what they want and offer suggestions. Sure, our main job is to sell, and there's nothing wrong with that. But who, if not the seller, will help the buyer figure out what suits them, what goes with what, how to combine it? Greta explained. Look, she pointed to the women's clothing section. This is a dress with a vest. It might seem like just a decorative detail, but no, it's the basque that balances the proportions between a normal waist and wide hips. Or this dress here. Pair it with a bright scarf or a different bag, and it completely transforms. Lily listened, her mouth slightly open. Greta's advice made her realize she had underestimated the work of a clothing store employee while overestimating herself. Greta wasn't telling her anything fundamentally new. Lily knew about cuts and how to combine styles. After all, in her past life, she had followed fashion trends and gone shopping with her friends. But Greta opened her eyes to the importance of engaging with customers, knowing how to communicate with them without crossing boundaries, and making sure they leave satisfied, even if they don't buy anything. I really like working here, Greta confided to Lily during lunch. I respect your mom a lot, and that's why I didn't quit when the other salespeople left. Not every store owner would sell their own jewelry to pay their employees. Yeah, my mom's something else, Lily managed to say, though her thoughts were racing. Mom sold her jewelry? She hadn't said a word about it. How come I only find out things like this from other people? It hadn't even occurred to her that her mother hadn't been wearing her earrings or ring. I'm a terrible daughter, she thought. I can't study well, earn money, or even get married properly. From that day on, Lily didn't just work part-time at the family store. She started giving it her all. She spent several days working with Greta and several with Olivia. She only took one day off a week. She helped customers in the store, sorted and steamed clothes in the warehouse, dressed mannequins, and kept track of the size availability of popular items. But most importantly, she took over the responsibility of promoting the store online, something Charlotte had previously handled on her own. Lily didn't know much about marketing or PR, but her determination to restore the family business outweighed her doubts. She began actively managing the store's social media pages, posting photos of new clothing, detailing product features, and answering customer questions. Charlotte noticed how hard her daughter was trying. She saw how politely Lily interacted with customers, how she quickly learned the details of running the cash register. Despite all the recent tragedies in their family, Charlotte felt a sense of joy at her daughter's delayed maturity. Lily no longer sent endless voice messages to her friends, no longer scrolled through her news feed for hours, and no longer snorted at every request. She even spent her one day off with her father. Charlotte regretted pushing Lily into a rushed marriage, not letting her get to know Ethan better or his family. At the time, the marriage had seemed like the perfect way to pull her daughter out of her childish mindset and turn her into a more responsible person. First, there'd be responsibility for a family, and then, hopefully, for a child. But Charlotte now realized how wrong she had been to think someone else could change Lily. No, only a person can change themselves or be changed by circumstances. Several more months passed, and Edward slowly began to regain feeling in the left side of his body. Full recovery was still a long way off, but the progress was already a huge blessing for Lily's family. The doctor's efforts and Charlotte's care had paid off, and she was overjoyed. Yet, at the same time, she couldn't help but wonder with a touch of sadness. Would Lily have changed for the better if it hadn't been for this hardship? One Monday, Lily and Greta were working at the store. The morning was slow, with no customers, so the girls were picking out outfits for the mannequins and laughing together. "Hello, girls." An elderly woman entered the store, smiling warmly. "Hello," they replied almost in unison. "I'm so glad you open at 9. I've had insomnia for the past few nights, waking up at 5 in the morning, and I just don't know what to do with myself. So, I decided to go for a walk, find what I need, and hopefully calm down. What would make you feel better? A blouse, a dress, or maybe a warm cardigan?" Greta asked as she approached the woman. "You know, I have a bit of a problem," the woman said. "I need to pick out a dress for a wedding, size XL. I went shopping yesterday next door." She nodded towards the neighboring shopping center. "But they only offered me dark colors. Could you tell us what kind of styles you usually wear? What would you like to show off? And what would you prefer to cover?" Greta asked. The elderly woman chuckled. "Oh, girls at your age, you should be showing everything. You're young and slim. But at my age, it's better to keep things covered. I want something light and pleasant. After all, my only grandson is getting married. If you find a dress with a light wrap, I'll be happy," the elderly woman said. The saleswoman showed her all the fancy dresses available in her size, and the woman carefully examined each one, knowing this would take some time. Lily decided to strike up an easy conversation. "So, your grandson's wedding is soon. Is the bride pretty?" "No, the wedding's still 3 weeks away. But I like to be prepared in advance. My grandson's name is Ethan. As for the bride, I haven't met her yet. I just arrived 3 days ago. I live far away, and my son sent me a plane ticket. He said, 'Mom, you'll celebrate your grandson's wedding and stay with us for a month.' So, here I am," she explained. The woman tried on several dresses, but still couldn't decide which one suited her best. "Girls, I've already kept you long enough. I'm sorry I haven't bought anything for myself in ages. There just aren't many reasons to dress up when you get older. My son says the wedding will be a grand affair. The bride is from a very wealthy family. We're in no rush, Lily smiled. It's good that the bride's wealthy. Fewer problems in marriage. Oh dear, money doesn't always guarantee happiness. Take my son, for example. He used to be so calm and reasonable, but now I hardly recognize him. He's become nervous and restless. His wife drains him for a luxurious lifestyle. Isabel loves expensive resorts and designer clothes. But my grandson? He's a good boy. He helps his father with the business and does what he can, the woman said, unaware of how her words affected Lily. Lily's vision blurred, and a pounding ache filled her chest. It couldn't be a coincidence. I'll take this one, the woman finally decided, pointing to a pink dress. It's refreshing, and the fabric feels wonderful. Lily tried to smile, but tears welled up. The elderly woman noticed and asked, "Are you feeling all right?" Lily couldn't hold it in and quietly sobbed. "I'm sorry. I'm just tired." "Don't cry, dear. You'll have your own special day, and you'll get married," the woman comforted her. "You know," Lily began through her tears, "I was supposed to get married, but it didn't happen. It was my fault." The woman took Lily's hand and spoke softly. "Let's finish up here, and then we can step outside and you can tell me everything." 10 minutes later, Lily was pouring her heart out to Ethan's grandmother. She told her about that disastrous wedding day, her father's stroke, her mother's devotion to caring for him, and how she was working in the store to help her parents. "My dear Mrs. Turner said, I'm shocked beyond words. I'm truly sorry about your father. But tell me honestly, did you really cheat on Ethan?" "No, of course not." Lily's voice trembled with desperation. "I'm not telling you this to win him back. It's too late. He's getting married. I'm just hurt that I was slandered in front of all my family, friends, and my father, who couldn't bear the shame. My parents have always seen me as irresponsible, and I couldn't convince them that I didn't confess my love to some stranger. It was all just a stupid misunderstanding. I agreed to meet someone who needed advice on interior design. I didn't think anything of it. Why would I go to the most popular cafe in the city if I were really trying to cheat? Right before my wedding?" "What was the cafe called?" Mrs. Turner asked. "It's just called Pizza. It opened about a year ago. They serve great food at reasonable prices. We call it the Student Cafe because it's always filled with students." "Lily, do you still love Ethan?" Mrs. Turner suddenly asked, changing the subject. "I think I do, though I'd say it's a different kind of love now," Lily admitted. "I know you're wondering why I ran away from the wedding if I loved him. The thing is, I was ready for a happy married life with the man I cared for. I won't deny it. I was attracted to Ethan's wealth. I thought marrying him would make me financially independent from my parents, letting me live as I wanted." Lily paused, then continued. "Before my father's stroke, we didn't have any real money problems. But my parents always talked about how hard I'd have to work to become a professional and live without worries. Now I see they were right. But back then, I just imagined how much time I'd have to spend working toward that, while all these exciting things were happening around me. And then your grandson came to the wedding dressed like a jester, telling me he was broke and we'd be living off his taxi driver's salary. I wasn't prepared for that. I had told everyone about my smart, wealthy fiancé, and then this happened." Lily sighed. "I know I must seem like a foolish, selfish girl who just wanted to secure a better life. And maybe that's true. But I'm just so exhausted." Mrs. Turner listened quietly and finally said, "Lily, you have a lot on your mind, but the most important thing is that you've recognized your mistake. We all make them. My son Derek is a successful businessman, a self-sufficient man. But even he is controlled by his wife. And he didn't tell me a word about this story. But you know, Lily, I don't think our conversation is over. Let's meet tomorrow morning. I have a feeling that I was meant to come to your store today, for a reason." Mrs. Turner said her goodbyes, leaving Lily feeling a sense of unexpected relief. As she returned to work, she suddenly heard someone call her name. A handsome man had pulled up too close to the sidewalk in his car and motioned for her to get in the front seat. Ignoring him, Lily kept walking. The stranger quickly jumped out of the car and ran toward her. "Hey, Lily, do you remember me?" "Hello." Lily replied, confused. "No, I don't." "What do you want?" Lily asked, her voice tense. "Whoa, calm down. Why so gloomy this morning?" "I just came to talk to you. I'm one of Ethan's friends, Lucas. I missed your wedding, but Ethan told me everything that happened. I've been messaging you on social media, but you haven't responded. So, I had to find you on the street. Do you know Ethan's getting married soon?" Lily answered indifferently. "Yes, but he doesn't love his fiancée. His mom is pushing him to marry this girl. Things aren't going well with his dad's business, and Sophia is the daughter of someone high up in the administration. He thought he liked her at first. She's a pretty girl, but after spending time with her, he realized they don't have anything in common. He's not happy about the wedding at all. Well, there's nothing I can do to help. Let him put on the same show with her that he did with me. Maybe she'll leave him too. Lily, I'm serious. You need to tell Ethan you still love him. There shouldn't be a wedding. He's setting himself up for disaster, and I just want to help him." "Lucas, why do you think I still love him and that I should stop him from such a good, advantageous match? Do you really think I'll believe anything either of you says, especially after Ethan pulled that stunt at our wedding? This isn't a joke, Lily. Goodbye." Lily turned and walked toward the store. "Lily! Lily!" Lucas called after her. "Do you even know how much Ethan is suffering because of all this? He's proud. He can't bring himself to say it, but he knows he messed up. A man controls his own destiny," Lily said loudly, the first thing that came to mind, and quickened her pace. Meanwhile, in the Turner household, Mr. Turner sat in the spacious kitchen, spreading butter on his bread. "Isabel, dear, could you make me some tea, please? I feel like a drink." "Of course," Isabel replied, slightly surprised. "It's wonderful that you're doing so much on your own, and now you're asking me for help." "Isabel, I just wanted someone to take care of me like they do at a cafe. I don't go to such places often. In my small town, there isn't much variety. So, what's stopping you from going to a cafe or a restaurant more often? Derek and I go all the time." "You're probably right. Actually, a woman who lives across from you suggested a place to go. What was it called again?" "Oh yes, just pizza. She said it was tasty and cheap. Do you think it's worth it?" "I'm shocked by that advice. It's a youth cafe. Always noisy, with rude staff." "No, definitely not. Have you been there, Isabel?" "I went once. Thanks for the suggestion, dear. But now I'm heading out for a walk." "Mom, where are you going?" Derek asked as he saw her getting ready to leave. "Yes, son. Could you drive me?" "It's nearby," she replied, glancing briefly at Isabel. Under his wife's watchful eye, Derek and his mother left the apartment. "Mom, I'm starving. I was planning to have lunch at home," Derek said, clearly nervous. "Don't worry, son. You'll eat in 10 minutes. I just want an excuse to talk to you face to face for once. Let's sit on that bench over there." "I know where this is going, Mom. As a former senior investigator, you're about to interrogate me, aren't you? I used to joke about it, but it's true now. The future of my only son and grandson depends on it," Mrs. Turner said seriously. "So tell me, why did you and Isabel ruin Ethan and Lily's wedding?" "What are you talking about, Mom?" "You know very well, Derek. Lily refused to marry Ethan after he told her he was poor and worked as a taxi driver," Derek replied, sounding exhausted. "But that's not the whole story. She was also flirting with another man before the wedding. We saw and heard it all. And why were you and Isabel, who usually dine at expensive restaurants, at such a cheap youth cafe?" "Isabel called me, and yes, I was surprised she wanted to go to a place like that, but I didn't question it. And what a coincidence. We happened to find 2 free tables in a crowded cafe," he said sarcastically. "Yes, Mom, we saved our son from that lying girl. Now he's marrying someone from a good, wealthy family. I'll be proud to have her father as part of our extended family." "Derek, why are you always so stressed? Your mother is still alive. Your son is marrying a respectable girl, yet you seem constantly on edge." What's really going on? Derek hesitated, then sighed. If you want the truth, here it is. I invested a lot of money into a business and lost it. We barely have enough to cover our debts, and the wedding's coming up. It's all a mess. Why, then, did you give Ethan such an extravagant wedding, putting yourselves into even more debt? Wouldn't Ethan have understood the situation? No, Mom. Isabel thinks that if we throw a grand wedding, Edward, Sophia's father, will respect us more. Derek, my dear, don't ruin your life or your son's life for this. It won't end well. You need to stop letting Isabel pull your strings. By the way, I ran into Lily yesterday. She's working as a salesperson at her parents' store. I can read people well, and I can tell you she's an honest girl who just got caught in a bad situation. Well, Mom, I don't even want to hear this, Derek said, already turning to leave. Wait, Mrs. Turner called after him. She explained to me why she reacted that way and ran off. Honestly, if your father had surprised me like that, I probably would have hit him with a frying pan. Besides, Lily's father is just now starting to recover from the stroke he had after all this mess. If you're so concerned about saving money, then go for a prenuptial agreement, not a circus. I know about Lily's father, and I'm really sorry about his condition, Derek replied. But Ethan offered to help with expenses, and he refused. We decided it would be a good lesson for our son to see who's with him for money and who's there for love. Maybe you should test Isabel with that same logic, Mrs. Turner said, raising an eyebrow. I saw a check that fell out of her purse yesterday. She bought herself another leather coat. Now I get why you're having money problems. I could live off that amount for half a year. Mom, can we end this conversation? Stop accusing us. Ethan's wedding is still going ahead. He's busy getting everything ready for the big day. Oh, I see. He's so busy preparing that he's turning pale sitting in front of his laptop. He doesn't even have time to eat. Mom, he's an IT specialist. That's why he's always at the computer. All right, you do what you think is best. Go eat. We'll talk later tonight. As Derek left, Mrs. Turner called a taxi and headed straight for the store to see Lily. She shared her suspicions with Lily and convinced her to meet again with the man Isabel claimed she had confessed her love to. Lily was reluctant at first, but Mrs. Turner persuaded her that this meeting could expose a serious lie. The future of Mrs. Turner's family, and maybe Lily's as well, could depend on whether this man would agree to talk. Though Mrs. Turner's plans seemed a bit far-fetched to Lily, after an hour of conversation with the charming ex-investigator, her doubts faded. After receiving a call from Lily confirming the meeting was set, Mrs. Turner gathered Derek, Isabel, and Ethan in the living room. My dear ones, she began, tomorrow marks exactly 45 years since I started working in the police force. I'd like to invite you all to a restaurant to celebrate this special day. The next evening, the whole family sat around a cozy table at an upscale restaurant, enjoying a variety of delicacies. The place wasn't crowded, and the conversation at the table flowed easily. Mrs. Turner shared stories with Ethan about what his father, Derek, had been like as a child, what hobbies he had, and how he spent his free time. Of course, after a few drinks, the elderly woman couldn't resist telling some stories from her career as an investigator. Isabel suddenly spoke up, asking her mother-in-law, "Tell me, where did you get the money for this restaurant? It's such an expensive place. Don't take it the wrong way. I'm just curious." Mrs. Turner responded with dignity, not the least bit embarrassed by the question, unlike her son and grandson. "Don't worry, Isabel," she said smoothly. "We're spending my hard-earned money. I have a good pension, and thanks to my son's regular help, I've managed to save quite a bit in the bank. That money will be enough for Derek to pay off his debt, and for Ethan to avoid marrying a girl he doesn't love, whom you pick for him." Ethan nearly choked on his drink at his grandmother's words. He had only shared his doubts about the marriage with a close friend. How could his grandmother possibly know about it? Derek, too, was stunned by his mother's bluntness and didn't know what to say. Isabel, on the other hand, was fuming, her breathing growing heavier as she prepared for an argument. I've lived long enough to recognize when someone is being pressured, Mrs. Turner continued. It's clear to me that someone's been pushing my son and grandson into this. Some people like to solve their problems at the expense of others, but that's not going to be your option, Ethan. You're an honest person, but you've been influenced by your mother, who I should mention doesn't hesitate to buy her 25th coat made from Himalayan goat fur while your family is struggling financially. How dare you speak to me like that? Isabel stood up and threw her crumpled napkin onto the table. Sit down and calm yourself, Mrs. Turner replied firmly. Then, turning to the door, she called, Lily, come here. To everyone's surprise, Lily appeared with an unknown man by her side. I invited a couple of guests to our wonderful celebration, Mrs. Turner continued. A celebration of truth, honesty, and justice. Isabel, don't you want to tell us how you arranged the meeting between this young man and Lily? How you booked 2 tables and took Derek along? Isabel stared at her mother-in-law, seemingly on the verge of a desperate move. Ethan, on the other hand, stared at Lily, his face flushed with shame. He couldn't believe how easily he had been swayed by his mother's words and gotten caught up in such a shameful plot. Unexpectedly, the young man spoke first. I'm really sorry about all this, he said, his eyes downcast as he looked at Ethan and Derek. I just needed money. Then Isabel suggested I could earn a little extra by provoking emotions out of Lily, making her say things she didn't mean. I would have kept it to myself, but when I found out Lily's father had a stroke after the shock at the wedding, I couldn't stay silent anymore. Please forgive me. His voice cracked as he lowered his eyes to the floor and quickly left the cafe. Lily stood silently, tears streaming down her face behind Mrs. Turner. Why? Derek's loud voice shattered the silence. Why would you lie to all of us, Isabel? Why did you convince everyone that our son's bride had betrayed him? And when Ethan didn't believe you, why did you suggest such a nasty way of proving it? How could I have gone along with this nonsense? I don't want to see you anymore. Wait, don't jump to conclusions, Lily cried, rushing toward the table as if struck by lightning. Don't argue because of me. I'm not worth such sacrifice, Ethan. I'm sorry, I didn't appreciate you the way I should have. I just never expected to be tested like that on my wedding day. She wiped her tears and quickly headed for the exit. Ethan immediately bolted from his seat and ran after her. Forgive me, Lily, he pleaded as they reached the door. For everything, for my father, for believing my mother's lies about you like an idiot. Please, let's talk. Lily and Ethan left the cafe, leaving Derek, Isabel, and Mrs. Turner at the table in a stunned silence. According to how this sort of thing usually goes, I was supposed to buy plane tickets and leave immediately. But since I live far away, please bear with me for a couple more weeks, Mrs. Turner began, her voice calm yet firm. I don't want to be the cause of your family breaking apart. You can hate me and curse me if you want. It's your right. But understand this. Feelings and people's destinies are not to be played with. And I'm not just talking about Lily and Ethan here. She paused, looking pointedly at Isabel. What about Sophia? She thinks she's loved and that she's going to be made happy. Derek, I didn't want to tell you this, but maybe now's the right time. Derek looked at his mother, confused. I loved your father very much, Mrs. Turner continued softly, but he didn't love me. Not because I was a bad person or he was. It was because his parents wouldn't let him marry the girl he truly loved. So, despite them, he married me in a hurry. On our wedding day, I was the happiest woman on earth. I rejoiced, dreamed of the future, looked forward to having you. But your father, though he physically lived with me, never let go of that girl. Until his dying day, she was always in his heart. Mrs. Turner's voice wavered, and she sighed heavily. You can't imagine how painful it is to spend your entire life knowing you're not the one they truly love. You're just the good mother and the good wife. That's why I stayed at work so much, trying to forget. I got diplomas, earned titles, but I could never get the one thing that mattered most, reciprocated love. So, please forgive me, son, if I wasn't able to give you all the motherly love you deserved. She squeezed Derek's hand tightly, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. Mom, why are you telling me this now? Derek asked, his voice breaking. Why didn't you tell me sooner? There was no reason to then, she replied softly. But now, the time has come. I'm sorry. Isabel suddenly burst out, tears streaming down her face. I've lost control of everything. It's all right, Mrs. Turner said, gently taking both Derek and Isabel's hands and holding them together. Just as she was about to ask for the bill, a tall figure appeared at the entrance. I have 2 pieces of news for you, dear parents. Grandma, Ethan said with a grin, and you, senior investigator for heart cases. He winked at his grandmother. Let's start with the good news. My carefully chosen bride, Sophia, is leaving for London to study. So, the wedding is off. Derek, Isabel, and Mrs. Turner stared at Ethan, speechless. And the even better news? Ethan continued. Lily and I want to get married again. This time, for real. And I mean just a simple wedding, no extravagant show. Who's in favor? Derek, Isabel, and his grandmother raised their hands, smiling broadly. Laughter echoed through the cafe. Finally, there was complete understanding and peace within the family.